We're going to develop a profiling operation for the Shopbot. To do that, I've drawn out my parts, and I have a 3/4 inch piece of plywood that I'm going to cut these parts out of. To do that, I'm going to make sure that all the parts started from the same plane and we're all extruded the same distance just by looking at it from the side. I'm also going to check to make sure that each of the extrusions are the same thickness as my material. And so 0.75 is my 3/4 inch plywood. I'm going to add an extra hundredths on that. And the reason that is I want the bit to go all the way through my material and just scrape the spoil board as it's cutting along. The other thing that's going to happen is the Shopbot works differently with the way it holds down material in comparison to our other mills. To do that, we're going to have to add a sketch to the top surface, and we're going to hold it down with screws, which are going to be in locations that we determine. It's going to be best to add these points about 1.5 inches away from our material. We don't want to have it be much more than that because we do want to have the surfaces between the two parts, as in the spoil board and the material, to be kind of tight. Once we have our 4 points that we are going to work with, we can go into our CAM and we can develop a setup for our part. To do that, we're going to generate a setup, and it comes out and it has our orientation, which is right like we drew it. And we have our work coordinate system developed right here. And we've got to get it set up so that our Z is going vertical. And so we're going to set up to where we select a plane, which is that one, and it sets my Z vertical. And I'm going to select a point on that box right there as my origin. Now, if you'll notice, this origin does not include the space that includes my dots. And so I need to move this origin out so that I include these holes where I'm going to pilot later on. And so to do that, I'm going to go into stock. I'm going to add stock to all sides, and I'm going to add 2 inches to each of my sides here. Maybe 2.5 here. Right, I add 1 inch on my Y, 1 inch on my Y, and it's going to tell me down here what the dimensions are of my material that I'm running with. And so I can go out and I can measure my material, make sure it is my 12 inches by 11 inches there before I mount it and take it over to the machine and have it worked with. Once I select OK, it has that and has this is the space that I'm working with. And I've got to add some drill marks that are going to go on each of these points. I'm going to select a tool. I'm going to go into my plywood tools and I am going to select my spot drill. And for my faces, I'm just going to select points. I'm going to select this point here, that one, that one, that one, and that one. I'm going to sit there. I'm also going to set the distance that it goes down to be -0.1. And you can see the drill bit going in. If I look at it from the side, I can see that it goes down into the material. I'm going to select OK. I'm then going to simulate it just to make sure I'm in good shape. So we can run that process. See, that's going in, making everything happen, which is a good thing. Close my simulation. The next process that I want to have happen is I'm going to develop a 2D contour. And so to do that, I'm going to select the bottom face of each of these parts. And then I'm going to go over and change my tool. The tool that we're going to recommend you utilize is for a plywood piece is going to be the 1/4 inch flat with a single flute. And that's going to allow for the chips to get out faster. And it's going to cut a little bit quicker for us and make less sound. I'm then going to look through, add some tabs. And the mindset on tabs is that each of these you're going to have to cut off when you're done, because we're going to cut this part out, and that tab is going to be holding this piece of the stock, and you'll see that better in a moment. But you really want to have about 4 per face. And so let's see here. That's so like 4 inches is way too few. 3 inches is probably just about right. And so we'll be okay with that. I'm then going to look and develop multiple passes. So we don't want to cut all the way through at the very beginning. So we're going to go 1.25 for our depth. So it's going to cut down 1/8 of an inch, go all the way around, cut down 1/8 of an inch, and so forth. And we're going to select OK. Now let's check that. So we can see that it's going to go down slowly on that part, and it's also going to leave a little tab in each of these locations. So let's check the part out. We're going to select step 3, and we're going to simulate it. And we'll run the whole thing. I can actually speed the simulation up here if I want. So we can see it's cutting out that middle part, it's cutting out my next part, and my last one. And if I look at it from the top here, I can see that I have each of my parts, and I also have left these tabs in for it to be worked with. So if I have that, I can be very confident, one, that it's not going to hit my screw holes that I use to hold down, right? And that my part's going to cut through all the way. The last thing that we really have to do is we have to duplicate our setup here. So I'm going to duplicate that. And you'll notice that over here I have my drill process, I've got my contour process. I'm going to delete my drill process out of my second one, and I am going to delete my contour process out of my other one. And the reason is I'm going to run this as a separate process on the Shopbot. That way I can run that part, then put the screws in to hold my material down, and then I can go ahead and do my contours. Make sure to check that with somebody before you run on your machine, but that should work for you as far as a profiling setup.